Welcome to Scrappy to Scalable, the podcast where we explore human-centered AI designed to level the playing field, empowering small and mid-sized businesses to compete with the giants.
Hey, everybody. My name is Felipe Crook with Caldor Dynamics. And if you were listening to this podcast, most likely you are an owner of a small or medium-sized business, and you are in some specific growth stage in your business, whether you know it or not. And every stage has predictable challenges, predictable frictions, and specific organizational elements that you need to have in place in order to get to the next level. And most companies stall out not just because they're not trying or they don't have really good ideas, because they are applying the wrong solutions to the wrong stage that they're actually in. And our next guest gives leaders a way to finally diagnose what stage they are truly in and map the exact path to scalability and higher enterprise value. Today's guest is Matthew Pohl. He's the founder and CEO of the Rewild Group and the creator of the organizational Rewilding framework, a research-driven roadmap that's helped thousands of SMEs break through plateaus and dramatically increase their valuation, including Matthew's own 10x exit. Matthew, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. So I will be very honest. My co-founder, when we first started chatting with you, he was extremely skeptical. He doesn't like anything that says, "Oh, if you do this, it's gonna fix everything." And then we had a 45-minute conversation with you, and you kind of outlined your philosophy, your framework, and he totally changed his mind and bought in. And it was a fascinating conversation. So I'm really excited to share with everybody here on the podcast. But before we do, I want to ask you a little bit about your journey and how you sold your company and how you created.
Yeah. Mike was a little skeptical, but I was glad that he allowed me to kind of show, kind of the proof. And I could tell by the end, he saw how it resonated with his experience, with his, with his past. And that's really what a lot of people find is that once you see the roadmap, it kind of just makes sense and it creates tremendous clarity. But just to get back to my background, spent my early 20s and early 30s in corporate America. And then in my mid 30s, I started my first business. And my wife is my business partner, has been for all these years. And she was entering back into the workforce. We wanted to find something that would be compatible with having 4 kids and her still wanting to be a mother. And so we started a business. It was in the legal services industry. We worked with attorneys involved in class action lawsuits, kind of a very small niche. And so we started that business mid 30s and we owned it and operated it for 15 years. But I say there's kind of like 2 seasons of that business. The first 12 years where we had built a profitable lifestyle business. But what we had gone through those 12 years was kind of this oscillating between, about 8 to 12 employees kind of back and forth. And we had kind of hit this revenue plateau that we couldn't seem to get through. And so that was kind of what it felt for 12 years, kind of okay because it was providing a good lifestyle, but a little frustrating because we felt stuck.
So what shifted? You said there was a second stage of your business. What shifted?
Yeah, so I kind of refer to
years?
that as kind of the second season. It's just kind of like when you're growing up and going through adulthood, there's different seasons of life. This was kind of the second season of the business. And it really started around year 12. We had a business broker come and give us a valuation on our business. And we hadn't really built the business to sell. That wasn't really our thought process. And so when he came back with a valuation, just under $1 million, it was like, well, that's okay. But, I've got 4 kids and college and, retirement. That's not going to cut it. And so my wife and I had a decision to make. Do we just kind of stick with status quo? Status quo wasn't bad. Or do we change things? And so we basically said, okay, we're probably going to be working, this was, late 40s. We've got 10, 15 years of work in us. Why don't we try to change how we're running and operating the business in such a way that when it comes time to be done with it, we're not just going up to the door, turning off the lights, locking the door, and kind of walking away like so many business owners do. In fact, that was my experience growing up in high school. My parents were small business owners, and they actually lost their business when I was just going to high school. And literally, the world I knew from my mom and dad's work for all my growing years, just one day came to an end, and they had nothing to show for it. And so that obviously was in my mind at least a little bit. And I didn't want to end, 10, 20 years of effort and really have not much to show for it. It was at the time we stumbled on a book called Navigating the Growth Curve. And it turns out the author of that book lived near me in the North Denver metro area, and I connected with him. And this book was just different. It had this roadmap for how businesses go through these different stages. And using that methodology, that roadmap, I could see where I was misaligned with what he called hidden rules of growth. There are things that you just would never think about, but when you learn them, they're pretty straightforward. But without that, I was just, like I said, we kept on bumping against the ceiling no matter how many hours, how hard I tried, we couldn't get unstuck. And applying that framework, I had immediate impact on the business. In fact, in 3 years, that second season, we went from 8 employees to about 40. That's a stage 1 to stage 4 business. We tripled in revenue and our profitability improved. Our business just became what I call an exceptional business. The team was amazing. Our brand in the market was outstanding, well respected. And at that point, we had a major competitor come and make us an offer for the business. And, it's kind of a unique situation. We had that valuation year 12. Well, 3 years later, we sold it for 10 times that amount. It was the stars definitely aligned. It was very much a lot of things helped us get to that valuation. But the reality is our business had been totally transformed. It was an exceptional business by that point.
Well, that is a remarkable turnaround, especially in 3 years. So my first question is like, well, how did you do it?
Not all of it was in the roadmap, but these key things that helped me understand growth, how businesses grow and how things change. And that's really what this roadmap does. Is it shows you what stage of growth you're in. It provides you rules or best practices to follow within each of those stages. And what that initially did was help me get unstuck from stage 1. That back and forth that we were really going back and forth between stage 1 and stage 2. I didn't know that. I didn't have those names. I didn't have the parameters there. But that's what we were doing for that decade. I finally understood how to lead the organization from being a stage 1. We then grew into stage 2, but here's the key thing. I knew what rules changed, and I could align with those rules. And we just kept on growing. We really didn't hit a major roadblock through those 3 years, even though we tripled. Well, the business totally changed, but the roadmap helped me navigate that growth in an efficient and
So you have your roadmap. It has a total of 7 stages. Is that correct? All right. So I want to get really specific and talk about each stage of growth. And you have a downloadable PDF that on your website that founders and owners can download and see what the characteristics of each stage are, so they can actually figure out what stage they're in and what they need to do differently to get to the next stage, right? So let's start. And you can share if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to be seeing this. If you're listening to this, definitely check the description notes because we're going to put all of his information on there and where you can download the this roadmap. I think this is going to be really important for people to see and understand. So let's start at the very beginning at the stages of growth.
This first slide or graphic helps you just get an overlay of the 7 stages. And really one of the key things is that this is based on research of now almost 30 years of analyzing and following small, mid-sized businesses, observing them. And so it's research-based. And what the research was trying to figure out is why so many small businesses fail, okay? And it found some patterns. Some businesses never really start growing. Others get started and then they get stuck. Others, though, seem to be able to navigate growth and do that continuously, kind of sustain that growth over long periods and significant volumes of growth. And what the research was trying to figure out is why. Why was there such a vast difference in outcomes for small businesses. And over these decades, what came out of the data was that businesses go through different stages, and those stages are defined by complexity. So smaller complexity, smaller organizations have less complexity, larger organizations have more complexity. Now that's that's well known. That's not all that revolutionary. But there's two pieces
Right.
that are revolutionary. And the first is that there are specific ranges, kind of plateaus of complexity during which the rules, the best practices to operate that business remain static. So if you think of these stepped plateaus, when you get to the next step, things change. Get to the next step, they change again. So the key was to understand what those levels of complexity those were. There were 7, but then to say, well, what's the indicator? What is the highest correlation to that complexity? And what the research showed is that it's the number of employees, or to be precise, full-time equivalents within the organization. A lot of times we categorize businesses by revenue. $1 million business, a $10 million business. That's not bad. I mean, that has some validity to it, but the reality is the dollar amounts, the revenue being generated can be quite different based on, a business model, what products are being sold and such. So revenue doesn't define the stage of growth. The number of people define the stage of growth because it's the people that cause complexity. Simple example, when I had my first child, there was a lot more complexity than it was just my wife and I. But by our 4th child, complexity was out the roof, right? So we know that adding more people to any kind of organization, whether that's a family or a business, adds complexity. But what the research found is that there are specific ranges, and that's what is shown here in this graphic. So startup stage 1, 1 to 10 employees. Stage 2, ramp up, 11 to 19. Stage 3, delegation, 20 to 34. And you can see the stages as they go out. Each of these stages has a name that really represents kind of a main theme. And I'll just give you an example here. Delegation stage 3. This is really a key stage for small businesses because they are transitioning from what we call owner-centric, which is stage 1 and stage 2, to enterprise-centric, which is stage 3 and above. And stage 3 is kind of that transition period to become enterprise-centric, because at that point, there's so much complexity, or I should say there's a level of complexity that the owner can no longer control it all. There has to be delegation starting in stage 3. And some business owners don't want to do that, and they get stuck in stage 2. Stage 4 is professional, and I'll just share this one. Stage 3, you're putting in an initial management team. By stage 4, you need a professionalized management team that is leading departments. So I'm not going to go through the rest of them, but that gives you a sense for these themes and some of the major changes that occurs from stage to stage.
Yeah. So it sounds like revenue is not the best way to judge where they're at, just because from a people standpoint and organization standpoint, the people are the complexity. And so that's why they break it down. Startups, 1 to 10, ramp up, 11 to 19.
A couple of things on that. First of all, people ask, well, is it really that precise? And the answer is, yeah. In almost every case, you'll find that going from 19 employees to 20 employees feels different for the organization. Now, in between these colored bars, you'll see a gray bar there, wind tunnel, flood zone, that kind of thing. We call those transition zones. So as you're starting to exit stage 2 and you're into stage 3, there's a period of the side by side, starting like say 18 employees to 21 employees, you go through a wind tunnel. That's transition zone. And there's weird things that go on. It just doesn't feel normal. What's really frustrating is you're having success, you're growing, and then you hit this transition zone and it just feels like the wheels get wobbly. And many business owners, they'll hit that transition zone. They might get into that next stage, and they don't realize they're just in kind of a rapids, kind of rough waters. And if they keep on pushing through into that stage, things will calm down. But they hit this wall, kind of like a sound barrier, if you will, and it's just too dramatic, and they'll pull back. And after they've done that a couple times, I'm at 18 employees, but when I get to 22, things are just crazy. They just stay back in stage 2 and hang out there.
So now we have an idea of what the stages are. Let's talk about when you go into a company that's in the stage one, and what are some of the typical pitfalls that you will see in a stage one that's keeping them from getting from stage one to stage
Yeah,
two.
so we've got a document we call the matrix where we can get into some of those details, and I know we'll get to that in a moment. But just at a high level, stage one is startup. It's really kind of the main theme there is chaos. You don't have enough people to specialize, so you should be hiring generalists because they're going to be wearing a lot of hats. And if you have too many people that just can do one thing, that really doesn't support this chaotic, kind of still being developed kind of an organization. You're still trying to figure out who your customers are, what to price, where you make your margins, what marketing works, what kind of systems you need in place, all that kind of stuff. So stage one is really known as the chaotic stage. It requires a certain type of leadership, which is one of the dimensions that we can talk about. But in stage one, you have to be visionary, coaching, commanding. These are three different leadership styles. And if you blend those together, you're going to be better suited for that particular stage of growth. While it's the third in that prioritization, a commanding leadership style does need to be placed in stage one because you're making a lot of decisions. This is not time for being a democratic leader. This is a time to make decisions so the organization can continue to move forward. So that can be a stumbling block in stage one.
Because people are less decisive? Are you saying they're less decisive?
There's natural leadership styles. So say somebody who's not naturally commanding or forceful in how they lead people. If they start a business, they often will never get out of stage one because they can't bring to bear to say, I need to make a decision. Instead, it's kind of like, what should we do? Let's get everybody's input. And then, the person that's been there 6 months gives you an idea and you just kind of go with it, even though maybe you're not sure of it, but I don't want to hurt their feelings kind of a thing. So that's just a small aspect, but that's the kind of thing that can stall a business if they're not organized and aligned with these rules. This document is what we call the Organizational Rewilding Stages of Growth Matrix, or we just call it the matrix for short. And sometimes it feels a little bit overwhelming the first time you see it, but as you start to interact with it, it begins to make a lot of sense. Across the top, you see those 7 stages, and just below that is the stage name and the number of employees. So you got those ranges. One simple guidance is the matrix will show you how many managers and executives you need for your stage of growth. Why is that important? Well, it takes a while to develop a manager that's effective, right? And so if you don't know you need them, you're often behind the 8 ball in selecting, identifying, and coaching and mentoring your management team and getting them in place. So, if you go from stage 3, where you have 3 to 5 managers, well, in stage 4, you have to double that number of managers. And if you don't know that, you can burn out your managers. Those important people could leave the organization, or you may just be running them ragged. So this is how the roadmap helps you because it shows you what's coming around the bend. It doesn't just help you where you are, but you can see what's coming next. And like I said, I was stuck at stage 1, but we got up to a stage 4 in 3 years. And I would never have known that I needed 3 to 5 managers, right? I had never had a business of that size. So I would have had to just figure it out by trial and error. And that wastes a lot of time and energy. The matrix then shows in these colored areas here, these bands of what we call rules of growth. These are best practices. And one of them that I like to show, and we'll start here, and you can direct me if you want to look at any others, but the gates of focus is a very powerful dimension here, this set of rules.
This is when you originally talked to us about this before the podcast. This is the part that I found the most fascinating because it makes sense. But if you're not aware of it, then you're probably putting the focus on the wrong thing.
When you learn it, it almost seems like common sense. And it's like, well, why aren't they teaching this in business school? It's because they don't. The Gates of Focus says there are 3 areas that you can focus on to grow your organization. We call them gates. So if you think about these 3 gates, you can go through any of these 3 gates. They're people, profit, and process. Those are the 3 gates that you can choose from. Now, those 3 are always important. Just like if you have 3 children, those children are all important, but sometimes one of those children needs to be prioritized, the newborn or the teenager, right? So It's the same kind of thing here, that they're all three important, but there's an optimal prioritization. And if you're misaligned with that, that can be one of these hidden barriers that keeps you from growing. This is one of the key things that I had gotten wrong and why my business was stuck. In stage 1 and 2, the highest gate of focus is profit. I'm only showing here 2, 3, and 4, but stage 1, it's profit as well. I'm a data guy. I'm a data scientist. So I like process. And I spent all that energy for those first 12 years really building a better mousetrap. And we did have a great mousetrap, but that alone didn't sell it. That didn't bring in revenue. And so what I realized from this roadmap is I needed to put profit as my gate of focus. What did that mean? That means I needed to spend more of my time and more of the organization's time focused on bringing in profitable revenue. And when we did that, that's where we started to grow. I was stalled on revenue because I wasn't putting enough energy on it. Stage 1 and 2, the highest is profit. In stage 2, you have more people, so process is second and people are third. That doesn't mean people aren't important. It just means that growth isn't going to come through spending more energy on your people. In stage 3, we get a big shift. Stage 3 is that delegation stage where we move from owner-centric to enterprise-centric. People is the top gate of focus here in stage 3. Profit bumps down and process is third. You put some energy in process in stage 2. It's down a little bit more in stage 3. Your growth comes through your people. And a lot of that is starting to grow that management team. Without that, your business will stall. Interestingly enough, then we get to stage 4. And what we see here is that process goes from the lowest up to the highest priority in stage 4. Stage 4 is where you're professionalizing that management team. That's putting in departments, that is putting in scalable processes. I see many businesses that grow rapidly, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, and for some reason, the wheels come off. The organization grows so fast, has so much success, it fails. And I'm sure many of your audience have seen that kind of a scenario. And what usually has happened there is that organization is driven by a business development person, a great rainmaker, brings in the work, but they skipped stage 4, putting in process. So they get up stage 5, they have all this revenue, they can't fulfill orders, quality goes down, they lose their customers, the business fails.
Profit stage 2, that makes sense. Of course, you
Right.
need money. Then you have to have some sense of process, and then people, the third priority. Then that completely flips. People, then profit, then process. And then it completely flips again. So how are you managing, and how do you weave through the stage 3 to stage 4, the stage 2 to stage 3 when you're having to shift those priorities? It must be a gargantuan lift sometimes for owners and founders.
This is where the saying, what got you here won't get you there, kind of shows up. And we all know that to be true,
Yep.
but we don't know really what to change, right? The point is, what's bringing you success today eventually stops bringing you success, but that's not enough. The question is, okay, well, what do I need to change? How do I need to change? And that's what the roadmap does. So I can focus in my business as it was growing. It was like, okay, I need to stay focused on profit in stage 2. I'll bump up process. Okay, that's easy enough for me. I go to stage 3 and it's like, oh, I've got to invest in people. Top line, that's my highest priority. It was really a shifting of the mindset. So little things like we started having all company meetings. I started having one-to-one conversations with all my managers and coaching them, teaching them leadership skills, looking for ways to delegate to them and creating structures so that people knew who they reported to, and really just mentoring them. It just was more of a mindset. And so that was not a difficult thing because I knew I needed to make the change. Had I not known that, I would have just stayed what was working in stage 2, got to stage 3, and it just becomes less effective. And then going to stage 4, again, it's like, I'm a process guy. In stage 3, though, I just have to kind of put that on the back burner. Not that I didn't do any process improvement in stage 3, we did, but I knew that's not what was going to give me growth. But when we started to get to stage 4, it was clear that we had to put more energy and more investment into process. I don't think it's so difficult to make these switches because they can be significant if you know what switching, what changing, what to align with.
Let me ask you a question. Like when you were in your growth process, and
Yeah.
you said you're a data guy, so process is very, very important to you. How do you kind of push down like your natural instinct to want to make it about process and really make it about people? It's just a conscious choice at every level of the business?
It's like, do you keep on just making your mousetrap that much more sophisticated? Okay. When it's good enough to service the needs of the organization, that would be a process mindset. Or do I say, okay, how do we bring in more revenue that's profitable? And the answer at that stage was I needed to spend more energy on business development, but I needed the whole organization to do that as well. So just a couple of simple examples. We had a call center as part of our services to our clients. They handled inbound calls. Well, what we did is we turned our technology and our staff that was taking inbound calls into outbound calls. We made 15,000 outbound calls to prospects in 1 year. That was a change of focus. And so essentially what we did is if you don't have client work to do, you are doing business development. You are doing outreach. So you're either on the phone calling or you are searching for attorneys online, getting their information into our CRM so that we can make calls. So everybody had a role in business development. We became this marketing machine and we went from 2 proposals a month to proposals a month on average.
And that was literally just a shift. That makes sense. And I think that when you're guiding people, you're like, okay, this is what we should be focusing on. And if it's not coming down from the top,
Well, I
it's not
think a
going to
lot
get
of
done.
areas of life, well, let me say it a different way. Entrepreneurs rarely lack energy and will, right? What they lack is focus and direction, right? So I
Hmm.
I rarely meet a lazy entrepreneur, right? So, but if you're putting all of your energy to the wrong thing, it's not really getting you the return that you need. I put so much energy in process for 10, 12 years. It didn't give me a return from a financial success of a business. When I just refocus that same energy, I'm working hard, but I'm in the right direction. The roadmap was directing me. All of a sudden I have success. So it's not a lack of effort. It's just a matter of having some guidelines to say, what do I need to change? And that's why this is so powerful.
You must have been so excited to get to stage 4 where process is like the number one thing. You're like, yes, I'm in my zone now.
What was interesting there, and I think this is a key thing when talking to a business owner about growth. Most business owners are at a stage where they feel like I've got enough challenges. I'm working enough hours. Why would I want to go from where I'm at, stage 2, for example, up to stage 3 if I've got double the work, right? I don't have double the time. The reality is that's not how it works. The challenges change. And as those challenges change, what it takes from you as a leader changes as well. And I'll just go over to this other area here. These are what we call the classic challenges. These are the 5 most common challenges out of a set of 24 that our research shows occurs by stage. And why is this valuable? First of all, it tells you, here's the main red flags I need to be looking out for. It also gives you a name. Sometimes just having the name of something, they say it's hard to defeat an enemy that you can't name. Well, here's your enemies list. Here's the names, and you can kind of get just some clarity around what's really going on in your organization just by looking at these classic challenges. It also allows you to anticipate what's coming next. So when I was going to stage 3, I saw core values unclear, culture resistant to change. I looked down this list and said, okay, what can I be doing even in as early as stage 2 to kind of anticipate and possibly mitigate those challenges? We had values, but those values in our organization were primarily shown in the lives of my wife and I as the business owners, right? How we acted, people kind of emulated, but we hadn't really codified those values. And so one of the things we did between stage 2, while we we're in stage 2, is we sat down and said, okay, what are our values? What are our brand values, our promise to the market, external to the organization? What are our core values? What are the values we're going to operate between each other within our 4 walls? And by doing that, in stage 2, we got to stage 3, we never had an issue with core values unclear because we had kind of anticipated that and we're able to mitigate that before we were in stage 3.
I love this idea because it's almost a timeline that you can start anticipating the problems of the next phase. And if you do them well, while also doing the current stage, the transition probably is a lot smoother and a lot easier, like you're saying.
The original book, Navigating the Growth Curve, that's what the author was communicating, is how can you navigate this curve from stage 1 up to stage 7 in a way that is, is smooth. There's not so much friction. And one thing I want to point out about these rules is you can violate these rules for a while and kind of get away with it in some instances. But what you're doing is you're creating headwind for your organization. The analogy I use is I like to hike 14ers here in Colorado. So peaks that are 14,000 feet above sea level or higher. Those are 14ers. And I've never gone to the head of the trailhead, right, to the trailhead with my backpack. I've never bent down and shoved a bunch of rocks into my backpack. Because when I'm doing that climb, which is like growing a business, I don't want extra weight. It's hard enough. And what happens with most business owners is their backpack is so heavy because they're so misaligned with these rules that they get up part of that mountainside and they finally reach a place where they say, it's too hard. Growth is too hard. I'm going to hang out here. And what aligning to the rules is unzipping that backpack and taking out all those rocks and making your backpack light again so that growth is easier. That doesn't mean everybody wants to get to stage 7. You don't have to get to stage 7. If you want to stay where you are, the rules still help you be more profitable, more resilient, a more enjoyable business to own. So you don't have to want to go higher, but if you want to go higher, lighter backpack sure helps.
I like the idea that you had earlier when you were saying you tried to sell your business and it was worth $1 million. But then when you realigned based on this roadmap, you became more profitable. You grew much, much faster than you had the full 12 years before then. And then you were able to sell it for 10 times the value that you originally got. So you can stay in a specific stage, but if you're aligned with the focus for that stage, it makes it more profitable. And if you do want to exit, which I think not a lot of people think about the exit when they're starting their business, right? It enabled you to sell a business for 10 times what it was worth 3 years ago just by aligning those things. So I think even if you don't want to grow like crazy, you don't have to have 400 employees. But if you want to have a good, solid business that's 20 employees, that's run really well, and following these roadmaps will enable you to have an exit strategy if you want to do that, that is more profitable.
Yeah, and you kind of have to get up to that stage 3 and above. I would say there's rare cases, obviously, but for the most part, you kind of have to get to a place where you're starting to delegate, where your business is enterprise-centric as opposed to owner-centric, for there to be real transferable value in that business. Now, again, there's exceptions to that, but if you really want a stronger multiple and, to really make a good exit, getting that stage 3 is a critical place to get, because then you'll have at least the beginnings of a management team. You'll have a team that's really doing a lot of the work. It's still somewhat dependent on you. And as you get past stage 3 and get higher, then that just makes the business more valuable, because the value is in the enterprise, not just the leader.
Yeah, because if you have a very charismatic leader, they can only go so far without having good processes, without having delegation. And I think a lot of founders think, I'm the only one that can do this.
And that's why they get stuck in stage 2, right? Because they get up to stage 3, they're just crazy busy. They're getting burnt out because they're still trying to operate a stage 3 business like a stage 1 and a stage 2 business. And they can't, there's just too much complexity. And so those businesses will naturally fall back to stage 2. And the business owner might do that a couple times and say, okay, I've kind of reached my max. If you want to go to stage 3 and stay in stage 3, you need 3 to 5 managers. Just the little things like that. Things change. And if you can't delegate, it's the delegation stage, you can't sustain stage 3 and higher. So that's, again, how the roadmap helps. This one's an easy one. It's called 3 Faces of a Leader. It helps the CEO, the owner of the business, understand where their time and energy needs to be allocated, either as a visionary, so really working on the business, communicating where the business is going, thinking critically about the business. That's the visionary. Manager is where you're overseeing others do the work, and specialist, where you're actually involved in the work of the business. And that could be operationally delivering goods and services, or it could be business development, bringing in revenue. And see, here's another area that I was aligned probably on the specialist line, but my specialist was all going to internal processes. So I wasn't so far misaligned here. It was really gates of focus where I was misaligned. One of the things just a recent example, some people ask us about EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, and how this differs. And I was talking to a business, they were using EOS, and EOS has this idea of having a visionary and an integrator. Those are kind of two major roles in their model. Part of what they're saying is, as a visionary, the head of the organization, you really have to delegate a lot of stuff. You shouldn't be so involved in the operations. And that's true, but that's really starts to be true really in stage 3 and above. But in stage 1 and 2, you'll see that the owner is spending 50% and then 40% as a specialist. The person founding the business often is the best at that business, has the most knowledge, has the most understanding. And so that knowledge has to get integrated into the business before you can start to pull out. And if you pull out too soon, the organization will flounder because that level of expertise in the services and products you're providing hasn't yet been infused into the organization. So this is a nice one. It's a nice guardrails to make sure. And probably the big thing here is that you'll see in stage 3, you're very small on manager in stage 1 and 2. But in stage 3, 60% of your time is manager. That's managing people and managing the managers that you're developing. So this was a big shift for me. I'm kind of a visionary guy, so I like the 40%, 40%. And then it went down to 10% in stage 3. And it's like, well, I don't necessarily want to do that, but this is what my organization needs. So I will do this. I will put much more of my time as a manager. And again, you can see without this, you're just doing whatever comes natural. And natural may work for a stage or 2.
Especially if you are a person who loves thinking of ideas and the vision of the company, and you've been doing that for 2 phases and 20 employees, letting go of that would feel a little sad to I'm not shaping the future of this company because of my vision, So I'm sure it's a huge mindset shift.
If you don't know the shift needs to take place, you're just going to continue to do what has worked, but what got you here won't get you there, right? So the last one I'll finish up with, and I won't go into a lot of detail, but these are 11 elements. We call them elements of an exceptional business. You can think of them as foundational building blocks. And these 11 elements are important for businesses between stage 1 and stage 7, but there's a prioritization. A stage 1 and 2 business has less complexity. It therefore needs a simpler foundation, just like a 1 or 2 story building needs less foundation work than a 7-story building. So what this allows you to do as a business owner is to help you prioritize. Stage 1, there's 2 green dot elements: org structure and business model. These are the 2 most important elements to get in place in stage 1. In stage 2, those remain high priority. You need to make sure you have those in place, but now you have brand and core values and one-to-one process turn green. They become a high priority for stage 2. By stage 3, you get a few more items like KPIs and business growth framework that become important. And you'll see this check mark. Org structure should already be in place by stage 3. If you don't have clear roles and responsibilities by stage 3, you live in chaos all the time. Your people are not able to perform well because they don't know what work is their responsibility. So this is another way that the business owner can benefit, is to know these elements. And this is a large part of how we help businesses, is we help them infuse these elements as well as make sure they're aligned with the rules of growth. That's essentially what we do as an organization.
Let's talk a little bit about how you integrate or how you help companies with your company specifically. Do you go in there and really delve into all of their systems, or is it more of a 30,000-foot view? Tell me a little bit about your process when you're helping companies.
When we use the word consultant or coach, there's, a huge range of what that really means. And so We say we focus on, I would say, two things. First, we teach you how to fish. It's important for us to share with you this roadmap, make sure you understand it, because you can't keep us as part of the organization forever. It's a much healthier organization if you and the management team, you the leaders in your organization catch it, they understand it, and then you can continue to apply it for years going forward. So that's really a big part of our philosophy. We want to teach you how to fish instead of fish for you. Now, how we do that is our engagements are structured in a very structured way. So maybe it's a 6 or 10 meeting engagement. And during that engagement, we'll focus on one of those elements, say a business model. And each of the meetings that we get together with you, you would include the business owner, and the management team, if a management team exists at that point. We use what we call a Rewild learning system in that we prep the participants with video content. So you learn the principles, the ideas, the concepts through the videos, short videos, and then you come together for a 2-hour meeting typically, where you actually apply those concepts to your business through hands-on activities. So it's very structured. So the structure is common across engagement, but what comes out of the process is company unique. So the owners are really coming up with the bulk of the ideas. We guide them on that and bring in our expertise where it's valuable. But most of the time, the answers are in the organization's mind, but until they can organize them in a structure and with language that we provide, it becomes harder. And that seems conceptual. So let me just give you an example. In our business model engagement, we talk about revenue circles. Revenue circles is this idea that a business should have revenue coming from core services, adjacent services, and edge services. And the reason you want 3 revenue groups is it allows your business to be more resilient. If the marketplace changes and doesn't need as much of your core, and if that's all you have, you may not survive. But if you have adjacent and edge, you can pivot. And oftentimes those are things that the market is moving to. So by understanding this simple concept of there's these 3 circles, core, adjacent, edge, and think critically about where your revenue is coming, usually what happens is the business realizes we're too isolated in our revenue. And what other things could we be doing that are adjacent or on the edge, which is really more innovative? And it gets the team thinking about it. And they start to say, okay, we could do this. We've done some of that. Let's do more of that. So just with that language and working through those principles, the business's model, the resilience of the organization is enhanced.
So you have helped thousands of businesses. I know you can't do that all yourself. So how are you managing to help so many people at the same time?
Our business model is kind of 2-layered. Some call it a B to B to B, which was a new term to me just in the last year. But the idea is our group here in Colorado has built the framework. So this roadmap and all the technology and the capabilities that are used with clients. But we work with training and certifying that next layer, which is independent consultants. So these are business coaches and consultants. They can come from a variety of backgrounds and they can have their own consulting kind of core revenue. Our services could be an adjacent to them. Some of them say, no, I'm just going to do rewilding. So that's their core. But the point is we certify these individuals, and then they get access to all this support material, all the structures, the videos, all that type of stuff. So then they work with small and mid-sized businesses in their network, whether that's in their local community or, we can do it virtually so they can work with a client anywhere in the world. And we do have advisors throughout the US, Canada, and around the globe. So
if a consultant wanted to be trained in this system and apply that to their consultancy business, they would get trained with you and then they can use that and they give a portion of their revenue towards the company.
You design it a little bit differently than a lot of things are these days. The idea of a subscription is kind of ubiquitous, right? We all have hundreds of them. We decided to go counter trend there. And so we make money when the advisors make money. There's not ongoing subscriptions. You get the material, you get the training, you get certified in it. As you have a client engagement, we get a slice of that. But otherwise, you're not paying us for something you're not benefiting from.
I mean, it seems like win-win for the consultant.
We think we're better aligned with the consultant using this model.
I think this is very valuable. It makes a lot of sense when you explain it. from a high level are like, yeah, whatever. But then when you dig into the details, it really makes a lot of sense. And it is a really good way to get people over the hump.
There's lots of frameworks, and frameworks are just meant to provide an idea, a concept, some principles that tend to work most of the time. And there's even a lot of different kinds of stages, kind of frameworks that are out there. Ours, I believe, is the only one that shows you precisely what stage you're in. But more importantly, that is important. But the key to the roadmap isn't I want to go from Colorado to Nebraska and I see a red line and I know when I'm in Nebraska. That's good, but I need some more direction. I need more details. And that's what that matrix shows, is that these are the rules of the road. You're in stage one, you're on that road, follow these rules, you'll get to stage two. So knowing what stage you're in is kind of the starting point. It's all the other details, these hidden barriers that really provide the insight for you to understand. We say it diagnoses where you are, right? It prescribes what needs to change, where you're misaligned and how you need to change that. And then it predicts what's coming next. It shows you what's around the bend. And that's what allows you to sustain growth and not keep on getting stuck each time you change your stage.
So if somebody did want to work with you in your company, what's the best way to get a hold of you and to download the information that we're talking about in this podcast?
Rewildgroup.com is our website. Just go there. We give a lot of information away for free. We want to help businesses. Our mission as an organization is to multiply the number of businesses, of exceptional businesses globally. We feel that if the more businesses that are exceptional, they create better workplaces. It's better for the owner and the people that work there. And when people work at exceptional businesses, they go back into society, to their homes as better versions of themselves. So that's why we're so focused on creating these exceptional businesses. But going to our website, you'll find a lot of material there. There's online assessments. Look for the matrix. There's a downloadable form that you submit for that. The best place to start, though, is there's a stage calculator. It'll just have you go through the math. You'll fill in a few blanks, and it'll definitively say what stage your business is in. Once you have that and submit that, it'll take you to another landing page that gives you stage-specific information. So it's really rich there. There's, free and low-cost resources. We've got 2 book series on Amazon that are great resources, and that's highlighted there as well.
Awesome. Well, Matthew, I really appreciate your time today. I learned a lot, and thank you very much.
Yeah, Felipe, I really appreciate this opportunity, and hopefully it adds value to your audience.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.